The U.S. Valor loomed like a ghost from a bygone era, its once proud hull now marked by scars of past battles. Captain Elara Reeves stood on the bridge, staring out at the empty expanse of space. The flickering lights of distant stars contrasted starkly with the dim, sterile interior of the aging ship. Despite the chill in the air, a warmth filled her heart at the sight of her crew, a motley collection of misfits and veterans who had come to call the Valor home. "Status report," Elara said, her voice steady, masking the unease bubbling beneath. She turned to her first officer, Lieutenant Mira Chen, whose keen eyes were glued to the display panel. "Drills are complete, Captain," Mira replied, her brow furrowing. "But there's still no word from command. They've got us sitting here like a relic, just waiting for the next museum tour." Elara chuckled, but the sound lacked mirth. "Maybe we should charge admission. At least we could fund our maintenance." The crew shared a knowing smile, but the atmosphere remained tense. They all felt it, the feeling of being overlooked, discarded. Suddenly, the console blared with an urgent notification. Mira's fingers flew over the controls, her expression shifting from casual to grave. "Captain, we're receiving a distress signal from the mining colony on Delta Prime. They're under attack. Self-our forces are engaging." A murmur of anxiety rippled through the crew. Elara's heart raced. That Selfar, a merciless empire bent on conquest, had been advancing rapidly. Their reputation for brutality was well known, and they showed no mercy to anyone who stood in their way. "Can we reach them in time?" Elara asked, her mind racing with possibilities. Mira shook her head. "We're not equipped for combat anymore. The newer ships are faster, better armed. We might be able to get there, but we'd be outgunned," Elara finished, her throat tight. The thought of lives lost because they were deemed outdated twisted her gut. "Captain," said Ensign Lee, a fresh-faced recruit, "we have to help them. If we don't act, those people could die." Elara took a deep breath, weighing her options. She glanced at her crew, their faces lit with determination. "We may be old, but we've faced our share of battles. This ship has more fight left in it than they know. We'll make the jump to Delta Prime." A cheer erupted from the crew, their spirits rekindled by Elara's resolve. "Set a course," she commanded, her voice rising above the clamor. "And let's remind them what the Valor can do." As the ship powered up, Elara felt a surge of pride for her crew. They had trained hard, developing makeshift upgrades and finding creative ways to maximize their ship's aging systems. Each member knew their role intimately, their skills honed through countless drills and late-night strategizing. The jump to Delta Prime was filled with anxious anticipation. As they hurtled through hyperspace, Elara reviewed the tactical data, plotting potential strategies in her mind. She knew they had to be cunning, that Selfar forces would underestimate them, and she planned to use that to their advantage. Arriving at Delta Prime in 5 seconds, Mira announced, her voice tight with excitement. As the ship exited hyperspace, the scene was chaotic. The mining colony was engulfed in flames, Selfar ships hovering like vultures over the wreckage. Elara's heart sank. The stakes had never felt higher. "Prepare for battle stations," she barked, adrenaline surging through her veins. "Today, we fight not just for ourselves, but for those who can't defend themselves. Let's show them what the Valor is capable of." With a resolute nod from her crew, Elara knew this was just the beginning. The old ship, once dismissed as a relic, was ready to reclaim its legacy. The fight for survival had begun, and she would not let her crew down. As the Valor descended toward Delta Prime, the scene below was nothing short of catastrophic. Fires raged across the surface, sending columns of smoke spiraling into the atmosphere. Selfar ships, sleek and predatory, circled like sharks above a wounded creature. Elara felt the weight of responsibility pressing heavily on her shoulders. Lives depended on her decisions, and she could not afford to fail. "Captain, enemy ships are deploying ground troops," Mira reported, her fingers dancing over the controls. "We need to act fast." Ilara glanced at the tactical display, her mind racing. The Xelfar were not just after resources. They sought to instill fear. "We'll split our approach," she decided. "Mira, you and Lee will take the aft and engage those transport ships. We need to cut off their reinforcements. I'll lead the charge toward the ground troops to provide cover for the colonists." The crew nodded, determination etched on their faces. Each of them understood the gravity of the mission. They were not just fighting for the colony. They were fighting for humanity's survival against an encroaching darkness. "Engaging thrusters," Mira called, and the Valor shuddered as it surged forward. Ilara gripped the edge of her command chair, her heart pounding with adrenaline. As they entered the fray, the ship's aging systems roared to life. Alarms blared, and the bridge was awash in red lights. "We're in range," Captain Lee said, his voice steady despite the chaos. "Targeting the first Xelfar troop carrier." "Fire," Ilara commanded. The Valor's cannons fired with a resounding boom, and the shot struck true. The carrier exploded in a flash of light, debris scattering like confetti in a storm. Ilara felt a rush of satisfaction, but it was short-lived. More Xelfar ships descended, their focus shifting to the Valor. "Incoming missiles," Mira shouted, her eyes wide. "They're targeting us." "Evasive maneuvers," Ilara ordered, her pulse racing. The ship bucked and swerved as she guided it through a deadly dance, narrowly avoiding the incoming fire. "Prepare the shields." As the energy barriers flared to life, the Valor absorbed the impact of the first missile. The crew braced against their seats, but the ship held strong. "Return fire. Target their weapon systems," Ilara shouted, focusing on the enemy ships that posed the most immediate threat. Mira's fingers moved deftly, sending another barrage of fire toward an attacking cruiser. The return fire struck, and the cruiser exploded in a brilliant flash. Cheers erupted on the bridge, but Ilara knew better than to celebrate too soon. The battle was far from over. "Captain, ground troops are deploying," Lee reported, his voice tense. "We have to stop them from reaching the colony." "Let's give them a warm welcome," Ilara said grimly. "Mira, get us low enough to engage. We'll target their landing zones." As they swooped toward the surface, Ilara's heart raced with the urgency of the mission. They had to save those trapped below. She could see the Xelfar troops disembarking, clad in menacing armor, their weapons ready. With every second, lives were at stake. "Now," Ilara shouted, the words barely escaping her lips before Mira fired the ship's remaining ordnance. Explosions rocked the ground, and chaos erupted among the advancing Xelfar forces. "Hold them back," Ilara urged, her voice fierce. "For every life we save here, we send a message to the Xelfar." The Valor unleashed hellfire on the ground troops, the crew working in perfect unison. Ilara felt a surge of pride. They were more than just a vintage ship. They were a well-oiled machine, ready to take on the galaxy. As the battle raged on, Ilara caught a glimpse of something out of the corner of her eye. A small transport ship, cloaked in shadows, was attempting to slip through the chaos toward the colony. Her instincts kicked in. "Mira, set a course. We can't let that ship escape." "On it," she replied, and the Valor turned sharply, giving chase. As they closed in, Ilara felt the weight of her decision heavy on her chest. This was just the beginning of their fight. The Xelfar were relentless, and she had no idea how far they would go to crush humanity's spirit. But in that moment, with her crew at her side, she was ready to face whatever darkness lay ahead. The U.S. Valor cut through the debris-strewn battlefield, its hull humming with energy and determination. Ilara's heart raced as they pursued the small transport ship, its desperate thrumming engines contrasting sharply with the chaos surrounding them. The Xelfar ground forces were in disarray, but they were far from defeated. "Captain, we're gaining on them," Mira shouted, her fingers flying over the controls. The transport ship was maneuvering erratically, trying to evade the Xelfar fire raining down from above. "Keep us steady," Ilara replied, her eyes locked on the target. "We need to make sure they don't escape and warn their command about us." Just as they closed the distance, the transport ship swerved sharply, its hull painted with the markings of a civilian vessel. Ilara's heart sank. These people were just trying to survive, but they were caught in a war not of their making. "Jax, get to the aft guns," Ilara commanded, spotting the young pilot anxiously glancing from the controls. "We need to disable that ship, but we can't destroy it." Jax nodded, determination lighting up his youthful face. "On it, Captain." He sprinted to the rear of the ship, his energy palpable. "Target their engines," Ilara instructed Mira. "We'll give them a chance to surrender." As the Valor locked onto the transport's rear engine, Ilara felt the weight of their mission settle over her. This wasn't just about saving the colony anymore. It was about humanity standing against oppression, one life at a time. "Firing," Mira announced, and the ship's guns erupted in a controlled burst. The shots struck true, the transport's engine sputtering and stalling, sending it into a tailspin. "Got them," Jax shouted from the aft, his voice filled with excitement. "They're going down." Ilara's relief was short-lived. The transport spiraled out of control, crashing into a nearby ridge with a violent explosion. She gritted her teeth, hoping the occupants were still alive. "Get us over there. Fast. We need to check for survivors." As the Valor hovered over the wreckage, Ilara's heart sank at the sight of twisted metal and fire. "Mira, can we get a beam down to their life signs?" "Scanning," Mira replied, her brow furrowing. "I'm detecting multiple life signs, but it's hard to pinpoint them with all the interference." "Get us down as close as you can," Ilara said, determination flooding her voice. "We'll search for survivors on foot." The crew braced as the Valor descended, landing carefully on the uneven terrain. Ilara, along with Jax and Mira, suited up and prepared for an on-foot rescue. "Stick together," she instructed, her heart pounding with the gravity of the situation. "We don't know how many Xelfar might still be around." As they emerged from the ship, the acrid scent of smoke and burning metal filled their lungs. The wreckage of the transport lay scattered, but a flicker of hope ignited within Ilara as she spotted a figure moving among the debris. "Over there," she called, pointing. They rushed toward the figure, who turned out to be a young woman, dazed but alive. "Can you walk?" Ilara asked urgently. I think so," the woman stammered, her eyes wide with fear. "I was escaping with my brother. He's still inside." "Stay close to us," Ilara said, adrenaline coursing through her veins. "We'll find him." As they navigated the wreckage, the sound of distant gunfire echoed in the background, sending a shiver down Ilara's spine. The Xelfar were regrouping. They needed to move quickly. "Jax, keep watch," Ilara instructed. "Mira, help me look for the brother." They scoured the wreckage, lifting debris and calling out for the young man. "Marco," Ilara shouted, her voice breaking through the chaos. "If you can hear us, we're here to help." Moments stretched into eternity, and just as doubt began to creep in, a weak voice responded, "I'm here. Help." Ilara's heart surged with hope. "This way." She and Mira raced toward the sound, uncovering the boy trapped beneath a beam. He was bruised but alive. "Hold on," Ilara urged, her hands working to lift the beam. With Mira's help, they managed to free him. "You're safe now. We'll get you out of here." With the siblings in tow, they made their way back to the Valor. But just as they reached the ship, the ground shook beneath them. Ilara's heart dropped as a Xelfar squadron appeared, weapons drawn and eyes gleaming with malice. "Get inside. Now," she shouted, shoving the siblings toward the ship. "Go, go, go," Jax urged, covering them with his weapon as they scrambled aboard. The fight for survival had just escalated, and Ilara knew they were about to face the wrath of the Xelfar. With her crew's lives and those of the rescued civilians at stake, she braced herself for the battle ahead. Inside the U.S. Valor, the atmosphere shifted from urgency to tension as Ilara slammed the hatch shut, sealing the siblings safely within. She quickly turned to her crew, who were already gathering at their battle stations. The bridge pulsed with energy, the hum of the ship's systems resonating like a war drum. "Status report," Ilara commanded, her voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through her veins. "Selfar forces are closing in," Mira reported, her eyes darting across the displays. "We've got incoming fighters on R6. They're targeting our rear shields." "Arm the forward cannons and prepare to engage," Ilara instructed. "We can't let them overwhelm us now. Jax, keep an eye on R6. We can't afford to get flanked." As the crews sprang into action, Ilara's mind raced back to her training days. She remembered the tactical maneuvers she had learned but never needed to employ. The Valor may have been old, but it had survived countless battles. Now it was time to awaken the ship's hidden potential. "Let's see what we can do with those upgrades we implemented last month," she said, her heart pounding with anticipation. "Mira, reroute power from non-essential systems to the shields and forward weapons." "On it, Captain," Mira replied, her fingers flying across the control panel. As they braced for impact, the ship shook with a violent jolt. Alarms blared as the first Selfar missiles struck their shields, flickering ominously. The crew exchanged nervous glances, but Ilara felt a surge of confidence. They had come too far to back down now. "Return fire," she shouted, and the Valor's cannons roared to life, sending a barrage of energy bolts streaking into the void. The shots found their mark, exploding against the Lid Selfar fighter. "Direct hit," Jax cheered, a grin breaking through the tension. "Keep it up," Ilara urged, but she knew the battle was only beginning. "We need to create an opening to get the civilians to safety." With Mira at the controls and Jax managing the weapons, Ilara felt a renewed sense of purpose. "We can't just react. We need to be proactive. Let's flank them from the side. Jax, prepare to target their engines." Just as she finished speaking, a warning light blinked on the console. "Captain, we've got a Selfar cruiser on an intercept course." Mira's voice trembled slightly. "Steady," Ilara replied, fighting to keep her own nerves in check. "We'll outmaneuver them. Jax, can you hit their engines before they get in range?" "I can try," he said, his voice resolute. "Then let's show them the Valor isn't just a vintage ship," Ilara exclaimed. "Mira, initiate evasive maneuvers." The Valor pitched and rolled, darting away from the incoming cruiser just in time. Jax locked onto the target, his breath steady as he took aim. "Firing," he called, and a concentrated shot blasted forth, striking the cruiser's engines. It erupted in flames, the explosion sending debris flying into the surrounding ships. Cheers erupted in the bridge, but Ilara's heart was still racing. "We need to use this momentum," she said, rallying her crew. "We're not just here to fight. We're here to win. Let's push forward." As the Valor surged ahead, they maneuvered through the chaos, weaving between Selfar ships and firing at any that strayed too close. The crew worked in sync, each member knowing their role like a dance choreographed over years of service. Suddenly, Mira's expression changed. "Captain, I'm picking up something on the sensors. There's an old storage bay nearby, likely untouched for years. If we can get there, we might find some salvageable tech to boost our systems." Ilara's mind raced with possibilities. "Let's divert there. We'll use it as a temporary refuge to regroup and reassess our strategy." As they altered course, the crew rallied around Ilara's plan. The old storage bay was a gamble, but it offered a chance to turn the tide in their favor. "Brace for impact," Ilara shouted as they neared the bay, knowing they'd have to navigate a narrow entrance while under fire. "We'll have to move quickly." Mira gritted her teeth, focused on the controls. Almost there, just a little closer. With a final surge, they slipped inside the bay, The hatch ceiling shut just as the Xelfar fired at them. The ship shuddered, but the bay's reinforced walls held firm. "Status report." Ilara gasped, her heart pounding. "We're safe for now," Mira said, breathing heavily. "But we've got to work fast. The Xelfar will find us." As Ilara took stock of their surroundings, she felt the spark of something deeper awakening within the Valor, a sense of purpose, a legacy. They were more than just a forgotten ship. They were the embodiment of resilience and the fight for humanity. "Let's see what we can find," she said, her voice steady with resolve. "It's time to awaken the past and forge a future." The atmosphere inside the storage bay was thick with tension as Ilara and her crew surveyed their surroundings. Dust motes danced in the faint light filtering through the bay's dim emergency lights, illuminating shelves lined with forgotten technology and supplies. It was a treasure trove waiting to be rediscovered. "Okay, everyone," Ilara said, rallying her crew. "We've got a short window. Let's see what we can salvage to boost our systems. We need to prepare for the next engagement." As they fanned out, Mira led Jax and Lee toward a bank of old weapon systems. "These could be useful," she said, her voice laced with excitement. "If we can retrofit them with our existing armaments, we might gain an edge." Ilara nodded, her mind racing with the possibilities. "Let's focus on anything that can enhance our shields and weaponry. We may have to face the Xelfar again sooner than we think." In another corner of the bay, Ilara discovered a cache of old navigation devices and communication equipment. As she rummaged through the clutter, she found a data pad covered in dust. Wiping it clean, she activated it, revealing schematics for various outdated systems. "These could work," she muttered, her eyes widening. "If we can integrate them with our current tech, we might improve our targeting and speed." Moments later, Jax approached, a handful of energy cells in his arms. "Captain, I found these," he exclaimed, a grin on his face. "They're ancient but could still pack a punch if we can get them charged." "Great find," Ilara said, feeling a rush of hope. "Let's get to work. Every second counts." The crew set to work, their spirits lifting as they unearthed more supplies. Laughter and shouts of triumph filled the air, a stark contrast to the urgency of their situation. For the first time in days, the camaraderie among the crew felt tangible, a bond forged in the fires of adversity. But as they labored, an unease settled in Ilara's gut. They had become a symbol of resistance, but they were still outnumbered and outgunned. Just then, a loud bang echoed through the bay, jolting them from their task. "What was that?" Mira asked, eyes wide with alarm. "Xelfar forces are breaching the perimeter," Jax shouted, his voice tinged with panic. "We need to hurry." Ilara's heart raced. "We can't let them trap us in here." "Finish what you can." She directed the crew to their tasks, but the urgency in her voice was clear. They had to be ready to defend their lives and the lives of the civilians they had rescued. As they worked furiously, the sounds of battle echoed outside, the roar of engines, and the crack of energy blasts reverberating through the walls. Ilara's heart raced as she caught sight of a flicker of movement near the bay entrance. "Prepare for combat," she yelled. "Weapons ready." With a deep breath, Ilara steadied her nerves. They were about to face the Xelfar in their own makeshift fortress, but she felt an unyielding determination surge within her. They were not alone. They were fighting for every survivor left in this galaxy. "Captain, the shields are online," Mira called out, her voice filled with urgency. "But they won't hold for long." "Good. Everyone, take your positions," Ilara commanded, positioning herself at the front, ready to lead. "This is our moment. We fight for the lives we saved and for the future of humanity." Just then, the doors of the storage bay burst open, and Xelfar troops flooded in, their weapons trained on the crew. The sight of the enemies, with their menacing armor and calculating expressions, sent a shiver through the crew. Ilara's pulse quickened, but she refused to back down. Now, she shouted, and the *Valor's crew opened fire, a chorus of energy blasts lighting up the darkened bay. The Selfar, caught off guard by the sudden resistance, hesitated for just a moment. That was all Ilara needed. With her crew fighting fiercely, they pushed forward, driving the invaders back, their determination transforming into a raw, unyielding force. As the battle raged, Ilara's eyes caught a glimpse of something shimmering amidst the chaos, a beacon of hope. If they could hold their ground, they could turn the tide. "Fight with everything you have," she roared, her voice cutting through the chaos. "We're more than a vintage ship. We are the Valor *. We stand united." With renewed resolve, the crew surged forward, a wave of humanity against the tide of alien oppression. In that moment, Ilara knew they were not just fighting for survival. They were igniting a spark that could light the way for others to follow. The battle for the galaxy had only just begun. The storage bay transformed into a battleground. Energy blasts flying in all directions as the crew of the Valor * fought valiantly against the encroaching Selfar forces. Ilara stood at the forefront, her heart pounding in rhythm with the chaos around her. Each blast fired was not just an act of defense, it was a declaration of their resolve. "Focus fire on the lead squad," Ilara shouted, her voice rising above the din. "We need to cut off their advance." Mira and Jax moved in perfect sync, unleashing a barrage of fire aimed at the lead Selfar troops. The aliens staggered back as the blasts struck true, some falling under the relentless assault. Ilara felt a surge of adrenaline. They could do this. But the Selfar were relentless. The soldiers regrouped, adjusting their tactics. More of them poured through the entrance, advancing like a tide. Ilara could see the determination in their eyes, an icy resolve that sent a shiver down her spine. "We can't hold them forever," Lee called from his position, sweat beading on his forehead. "They're coming in from all sides." "Then we need to make a stand," Ilara responded, her voice steady despite the growing dread. "Form a perimeter around the civilians." The siblings huddled behind the crew, wide-eyed but steadfast. Ilara's heart swelled with pride and protectiveness. They were not just fighting for their own survival, but for the future of those who had already suffered so much. As the crew repositioned themselves, Ilara felt a shift in the tide of battle. They needed more than just defensive tactics. They had to find a way to turn the momentum in their favor. "Jax," Ilara called out, "can you access any of the old weapons we found? If we can set up a heavy blaster at the entrance, it might give us the firepower we need." "On it," Jax replied, sprinting toward the stash they had gathered earlier. He quickly began to rig one of the old energy cannons, his hands moving with practiced speed. The Selfar pressed forward, their alien weapons lighting up the dim space as they returned fire. One shot grazed Ilara's shoulder, causing her to wince. She pushed the pain aside, focusing instead on her crew. "Stay sharp," she urged, rallying them with her gaze. "We've fought too hard to let them take this from us." Just then, Jax shouted, "Ready." He positioned the heavy blaster at the entrance, his eyes flickering with determination. "Let's give them a surprise." "Everyone, brace yourselves," Ilara called, taking a defensive stance. "On my mark." As the first wave of Selfar soldiers rushed through the opening, Ilara raised her hand. "Now." Jax fired the blaster, and a deafening roar filled the bay as the energy blast tore through the air, striking down the first line of Selfar troops. The sheer force of the blast sent several soldiers flying backward, and cheers erupted among the crew. "Keep it going," Ilara shouted, her heart racing with renewed hope. "We can't let up now." The crew worked tirelessly, Jax manning the heavy blaster as the others provided cover fire. Ilara felt the tide turning. They were holding their ground, pushing back against the overwhelming numbers of Selfar. But even as they fought valiantly, fatigue began to set in. Ilara glanced at her crew, sweat and dirt mingling on their determined faces. They were brave, but they couldn't sustain this forever. "Captain," Mira shouted, her voice strained. "We've got more ships closing in. We need to get out of here." Ilara's mind raced. They couldn't hold the bay indefinitely, and retreating was not an option if it meant abandoning the civilians. "Then we need to make a strategic withdrawal," she said. "Back to the Valor *." With a rallying cry, Ilara led the charge toward their ship. The crew formed a protective circle around the siblings, firing at the Selfar as they retreated. "Get to the Valor *." "Move," Ilara shouted, feeling the weight of their mission pressing down on her. The crew surged forward, reaching the ship just as another wave of Selfar troops stormed the bay. Ilara pressed a button on the console, sealing the hatch behind them with a thud. "Status report," she called, breathless. "We're back online," Mira said, her fingers flying over the controls. "Shields are holding for now, but we need to recharge. Then we need to make our exit," Ilara commanded, her voice firm. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers. Jax, get to the weapons systems." As the crew moved into action, Ilara took a moment to steady her breathing. They had fought bravely, but the battle was far from over. The Selfar would not let them escape easily. "Captain," Mira warned, her voice strained. "They're targeting us." "Full thrusters," Ilara shouted, determination igniting within her. "We're getting out of here." As the Valor surged forward, Ilara gripped the controls, navigating through the chaos of the battlefield. The Selfar ships were closing in, but they were not just another ship. They were the Valor, and they would not go down without a fight. "Hold on tight," she yelled as the ship hurtled into the fray, ready to reclaim their destiny against the dark forces of the Selfar. The Valor surged forward, its engines roaring as Ilara maneuvered through the chaos of the battlefield. The Selfar ships loomed ominously, their sleek designs glinting menacingly as they pursued. She could feel the pulse of her crew behind her, a mix of adrenaline and determination propelling them forward. "Captain, we got incoming fire from the left," Mira shouted, her fingers dancing over the controls. "Shields at 60%. Divert power from non-essential systems. We need every ounce of strength in our shields and weapons," Ilara replied, her heart racing. The crew moved with practiced efficiency, adapting to the situation as they prepared for the onslaught. "Jax, prepare a volley of torpedoes. Target the lead ship," Ilara commanded, her eyes locked on the advancing Selfar fleet. They had to break through the formation if they were going to escape. "Ready," Jax called back, determination etched on his face. He launched a barrage of torpedoes that streaked through the vacuum of space, striking the lead ship with explosive force. The Selfar vessel shuddered and began to break apart, a brief glimmer of victory igniting hope within the crew. "Good shot. Keep it up," Ilara shouted, feeling the weight of her crew's resolve. They were not just surviving, they were fighting back. But the Selfar were relentless. As the Valor tore through the battlefield, more enemy ships closed in from all sides. The sensors blared warnings, a cacophony of alarms echoing through the bridge. "Captain, they're flanking us," Mira shouted, panic creeping into her voice. "We're outnumbered." Ilara's mind raced. They needed a way to escape the encirclement, a tactical maneuver that could turn the tide. "Mira, can you access the old navigation system? If we can create a diversion, we might have a chance." Mira's fingers flew over the controls, her brow furrowing in concentration. "I can initiate a subspace jump, but we'll need to make it quick before they lock onto our coordinates." "Do it," Ilara commanded. "I'll cover you. Jax, target their engines. We need to slow them down." Jax's focus sharpened, and he unleashed another volley, striking at the nearest Selfar ship. The explosion lit up the darkness of space, sending debris scattering like shooting stars. "Jump prep is complete," Mira announced, her voice steady despite the chaos. "On your mark, Captain." Ilara felt the tension in the air, the moment hanging like a fragile thread. They were ready to escape, but the Xelfar were closing in fast. "Now, engage the jump," she shouted, her heart pounding. The Valor shuddered as the engines roared to life, warping the very fabric of space around them. A blinding flash enveloped the ship, and for a moment, everything felt suspended in time. Then with a jolt, they were free, flung into the vastness of space, the chaos of battle fading behind them. Ilara let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. They had escaped, for now. "Status report," she called, scanning the console as they entered a quieter stretch of space. "Shields holding at 30%, Mira reported, her voice a mix of exhaustion and relief. "We're clear for the moment, but we need to regroup and assess damage." Jax grinned, his spirit undeterred. "We did it, Captain. We held them off." "Let's not celebrate just yet," Ilara replied, her mind still racing. "We need to find a safe place to regroup and figure out our next move. The Xelfar will be looking for us." As they plotted a course, Ilara couldn't shake the feeling of dread that hung over her. They had narrowly escaped, but the battle was far from over. The Valor and her crew had become a symbol of resistance, but it was a title that came with a heavy burden. "Captain, I'm picking up a signal," Mira said, her eyes widening. "It's faint, but it's coming from a nearby planet. It could be a distress signal." Ilara's instincts kicked in. "Plot a course. We need to investigate. If there are survivors, we can't leave them behind." As the Valor changed direction, Ilara glanced at the siblings, who had been quiet during the chaos. The young woman, now more composed, caught Ilara's gaze. "Thank you for saving us," she said, her voice steady. "You fought bravely. We owe you everything." Ilara felt a warmth spread through her chest. "We're all in this together," she replied, her voice filled with conviction. "We're fighting for our future, and every life counts." As they approached the planet, the urgency of their mission solidified in Ilara's mind. They would continue to fight, not just for themselves, but for every survivor, for every lost hope that flickered in the darkness. They would become the beacon of resistance against the Xelfar, and she would lead them through whatever lay ahead. "Prepare for descent," Ilara commanded, her heart steady with resolve. "Let's see what this planet has to offer, and what dangers await us. The reckoning is just beginning." The Valor descended through the atmosphere of the planet, the vibrant colors of its surface coming into focus. Lush forests and sparkling oceans sprawled beneath them, but Ilara couldn't shake the feeling of foreboding that hung in the air. This world held secrets, and they had to tread carefully. "Mira, scan for life signs," Ilara instructed, her eyes glued to the console. "We need to know what we're walking into." "Scanning now," Mira replied, her fingers moving quickly over the controls. "I'm detecting several clusters of life signs, but they're scattered. Most are concentrated near a settlement on the eastern shore." "Let's head there," Ilara said, her voice firm. "If there are survivors, we need to reach them before the Xelfar do." As they approached the settlement, Ilara felt a mix of anticipation and anxiety. The Valor hovered above the shoreline, revealing a small village nestled among the trees. The structures were rustic, but appeared intact, the signs of life indicating a community that had been living in relative peace, until now. "Prepare for landing," Ilara commanded, her heart racing. "Jax, make sure our defenses are ready. We can't be caught off guard again." The ship touched down smoothly, the engines humming softly as the crew prepared to disembark. Ilara took a moment to gather her thoughts, knowing they were stepping into the unknown. She could feel the weight of responsibility pressing on her shoulders. "Stay close and keep your weapons at the ready," she instructed the crew. The siblings followed closely behind, their expressions a mix of hope and apprehension. As they stepped off the ship, the sounds of the village reached them. Children's laughter, the distant chatter of adults, and the gentle rustling of leaves. It felt like a sanctuary, but Ilara knew appearances could be deceiving. "Hello," Ilara called, projecting her voice to reach the villagers. "We're here to help." A few villagers emerged from the tree line, warily eyeing the newcomers. An older man stepped forward, his face weathered but resolute. "Who are you? What do you want?" "We're from the U.S. Valor," Ilara said, raising her hands in a gesture of peace. "We're seeking survivors from a nearby attack. We came to see if anyone needs assistance." The villagers exchanged glances, uncertainty etched on their faces. The older man regarded Ilara for a long moment before nodding. "We lost some of our own to the Xelfar. They've been raiding nearby settlements. If you can help us defend ourselves, we can provide shelter and supplies." Ilara's heart swelled with purpose. "We'll do everything we can to help. We need to organize a defense plan and gather resources. Together, we can stand against them." As the villagers began to mobilize, Ilara felt a sense of unity forming. This was no longer just about her crew. It was about forging alliances, building a resistance that could stand against the Xelfar threat. Mira and Jax joined the villagers, quickly assessing what supplies they had. "We can set up a perimeter," Mira suggested, pointing to natural barriers around the settlement. "If we can reinforce those areas, it will buy us some time." Ilara nodded, feeling the spark of a plan taking shape. "Let's gather everyone. We need to train the villagers and fortify their defenses. The Xelfar will not stop until they've taken everything from us." As they worked alongside the villagers, the sense of purpose grew. Ilara found herself teaching them basic combat techniques, sharing strategies she had learned over the years. It was invigorating to see the community come alive with determination, their fear transforming into a fierce resolve. Days turned into a whirlwind of activity. The villagers quickly adapted, fortifying their homes and arming themselves with makeshift weapons. The bond between Ilara's crew and the villagers deepened, a shared understanding forged in the fires of conflict. Then, one evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, a scout rushed into the settlement, breathless. "They're coming. A Xelfar raiding party is on the move." Ilara's heart raced, adrenaline surging through her veins. "Prepare the defenses. Everyone to your positions," she commanded. As the villagers gathered, ready to fight for their home, Ilara stood at the forefront, her crew beside her. They were no longer just a vintage ship or a desperate crew. They were a force of hope and resilience. The sounds of battle echoed in the distance, but this time, Ilara felt a surge of confidence. They would not back down. They were united against the darkness, a beacon of defiance in a galaxy overshadowed by tyranny. "Together, we will fight," Ilara shouted, her voice ringing clear. "For our freedom, for our lives, and for every survivor who has lost everything." As the first Xelfar ships appeared on the horizon, Ilara felt the weight of destiny resting on her shoulders. This was not just a fight for survival. It was a fight for a future that would be forged in the fires of unity and courage. And she would lead them into that new dawn.